Welcome back. You're watching the Dr. Nandi Show, and we're getting more comfortable with the inevitable, and that's death. My next guest used to be a stand-up comedian. He was provocative and challenging. He's still that today, but he's been on a long journey of healing and discovery, and now has a very different gig. I'm delighted to have with us transformational speaker and the author of Master Your Universe, Mr. Gary Stuart, my good friend. Very amazing.
Oh,
always.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
So, Gary, you just recently went through some grief yourself, had a tremendous loss.
Yes, absolutely.
And you lost your spouse. Tell me what happened, and tell us how you dealt with it, rather.
Yeah, well, with my healing work that I do, I'm always dealing with systemic or generational grief. That's my profession, being a Constellation Facilitator for 20 years. And I'm good with it, but when it hits you in the face, and I think the biggest thing is deaths that are expected are still surprised, but when it's a shock with a car accident, something totally remote. So my spouse died with a massive heart attack on a 20th anniversary vacation, just in the middle of the afternoon after lunch. So it was, I can honestly say, it was a nightmare and a total shock. And at the same time, with my skills of being a facilitator for that amount of time, I could handle it on a soul level or a deep level. And it still is a process of going through the different stages. And I'm still going through them. I probably always will.
Totally different, though, isn't it? I mean, here's the thing. You know, I spoke at the beginning of the show. I'm a doc, and I have counseled so many patients on what it's like, and told them everything that I possibly could to get them to the grief of death.
Yes, yeah.
But when my dad died, it was a different ball game altogether.
Absolutely.
I completely broke down, and I dealt with it and I understood. But man, was it different. Tell us about that. You do this for a living.
Yes.
But man, is it different when it's really, I mean, somebody as close as your spouse was.
Yes. Well, the biggest thing with it is consciousness never dies. And the biggest thing about death, I want to talk about the deeper stuff, the hidden dynamics of death. Death will always take us by surprise. And really what's deeper than grief is the helplessness that we're out of control of the bigger forces of life. I think there's really three big forces we're all at the effect of that we can't control. That would be life. Look at your newborn kids, totally needing everything. Sexuality. We're helpless to love and romance. People have had bad breakups. There's grief there when you're dumped or you dump somebody. And of course, death is one of the biggest ones we have because we can't control it. And we're at the effect of that surprise factor. And grief is actually the loss of being out of control. So grief, the deepest thing I see with grief is the sense of helplessness and powerlessness. And that's part of what the grief process is.
And it's different for each society. Our society, I mean, seems to, like, you know, death, well, not going to talk about it. Was good at a funeral and that's it.
Exactly.
But other societies deal with it differently. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, in Amsterdam, they're doing death cafes. So it would be like a coffee house that people come to.
A death cafe?
Yeah, in Amsterdam. My friend lives in Amsterdam, so I have spies in Europe. And they have a prescribed time they meet, and they talk about choosing to end their own lives. We have it in the United States.
People that are close to death?
Assisted suicide, yes. And they commune together as a collective to talk about their fears or finding the right doctor in a supportive setting. But my friend in Amsterdam, she lives there, and she is very regimented. It's very private, but it's to support that they can't take the pain anymore and they'd rather have assistance. And we have medically assisted suicide in America, different states as well. So they're being actually empowered to take control of their own destiny.
Tell me about your specialty. I love your tie. Constellations.
Yes.
Tell me all about constellations.
Well,
people may have never heard this before.
I'm sure they haven't. It has nothing to do with astrology or the stars. It's really a key to unlock the door to our subconscious mindset. So 90% of which you inherited, we'll say, from your father or your family system, belongs to all those dead ancestors who came before. So think of how many, 10 generations is 8,000 people who came before us. Yeah. And that's a lot of people. It's like an iceberg. We're on top of the iceberg in life, beautiful sunshine. 9/10 of that iceberg is below us, and that's actually all our dead ancestors floating us in consciousness, which doesn't end.
How does constellations help us with dealing with grief or, you know, when we have somebody, a loved one who passes away?
Well, it's consciousness doesn't die. We may lose our physical form, but consciousness is, I believe, eternal, and we can access that. I do it in a group process. It can be one-on-one as well, that other people in the room would represent a dead ancestor and get very specific information to help the client who may be grieving, or any part of their life. It could be for business, grief, loss, romance, any subject whatsoever. We want to see the greater subconscious facets to our perceived problem. So it's very shamanistic in a way. We're going to the spirit world to see what's missing. We bring that back and they can go, ah.
And here's why you go, ah, because one of the worst feelings is that knowing that the person who's left you is not taken care of or is not in a good place. You know, and really, we don't have the powers or ability at this time to know that. And what Gary, through his work, has done is help people like me to know that my father, who was just everything to me, is in a good place. And that's amazing. And the kind of work he does is amazing. The book is Master Your Universe, How to Direct and Star in Your Own Life. Amazing stuff. Gary, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to have an amazing soul. You have to trust me on that. Of course.